This is a game where you infect unsuspecting victims with a disease which gives them a crown, then watch them spread the disease to their comrades. You'll get infect tokens based on the success of the disease, and can spend those infect tokens on more diseases which you can then upgrade. The closest thing to a win condition is to go see what all the upgrades do. One score, I suppose, could be read as the duration of the longest disease you've created. A land beplagued by unease, seeded by your own disease. All over town, many have crowns. Reviews are in, folks displeased. I made this game for Ludum Dare over the course of a weekend. Ludum Dare, the biannual challenge to create a game according to a certain theme in a mere weekend. All participants in this instance were demanded to create a game according to the theme of Keep It Alive, to which I say, alright, we're going to be keeping the epidemic alive. I think that in the end, the principal flaw of any kind of relation to the theme is that once you've deployed the plague, there's not really anything you can do to keep it alive. You just have to kind of watch it take its course. So yeah, I realized that the game was naff and made it some more over the following week. Unfettered from thematic restraint in the upgraded premium, luxury, pristine version, there is actually something to do while watching your disease ravage the population. If you've upgraded your pathogen with spanner power, you can force your victims to build things. As with everything in this game, the building feature is woefully skeletal and underdeveloped. There are but two buildings. The first is the pathogenerator. How diseases work is that the first person you infect needs to be near a pathogenerator, and you start with one. If I were to make a further expanded version of this game, pathogenerators would be your chess kings. You'd want to keep the people weak or subjugated or subject to a disinformation campaign so that they don't come and tear down the pathogenerators. If you lose all of them, you lose the game. But now we're veering into the territory of the imagined game that does not exist, and which I have not yet made. That comes later, in the part of the video where I describe in vast detail the presently fictitious game that this could be if expanded further. In the actual game, there is no way for buildings to be destroyed, and so you cannot lose. The other building which you can force people to build is the 5G tower, which helps to spread infection in this fictional video game environment, unlike in reality. This is an example of a feature I put into the game primarily because it is funny. Other reasons, like giving you permanent upgrades from one epidemic to the next, and giving you something to do while an illness is underway, these reasons are secondary. This game is one of many attempts I've made to create what I call an aquarium, a simulated environment that's fun to just kind of watch for a while. Occasionally you could prod the ecosystem in the aquarium by, in this case, adding disease. In other cases, perhaps by adding food or performing a genocide to remove a species. I think a large and detailed aquarium with many species, with different life cycles, with genetics, diseases and such, could be interesting to make, and similarly interesting to watch. I think virtual aquaria have myriad advantages over physical ones. They're cheaper and easier to run, and if it's well made, you, the viewer, can have a sort of omnipotence over the ongoings of the land that you're viewing. There is no reason to not implement the ability to instantly smite any of the creatures that you so choose, to force them to breed, to change the levels of food in their stomachs, or to view their current status in every regard, from hit points to age. I'll certainly have another crack at making a detailed aquarium in the future. I stopped using Game Maker in part because making UI in it is like having teeth pulled while your legs get consumed by flesh-eating bacteria. It's horrid. This is fine when, like in Rotating Squares of Death, the UI is just some text at the top of the screen. But for games like this, there's a lot of UI, a lot of buttons to press, a lot of data to display. And certainly if I were using Game Maker to make this game, I'd be looking up noose loops instead of for loops. Fortunately, I am using Godot, in which making UI is like seating yourself on the throne of porcelain and taking a good regal shit that satisfactorily voids your bowels. It is a divine and kingly experience. In this solitary case, however, a lot of time was spent learning how to use these systems, because I haven't touched a lot of them before. But once my head was suitably wrapped around them, it was a truly majestic experience. Because of the node and tree way that everything is set up in Godot, you can put all of your text and images into one container, and then move that container, and all that shit will just move with it. No more manually keeping track of all of these coordinates and such. Anchor points! You can say, hey, I want this button to be the full width of the parent container, and like a peasant being ordered around by the royal class, the button just has to do it. You could make the container 1,000,000 pixels wide, and the button will follow. Or you can say you want it to be half as wide, or stay the same size, but always remain in the center. It's fantastic. Look at these containers. You have a list container, and you put a bunch of things in it. And it just forms a list without any extra input. Scroll bars. I know that the general way that Game Maker is set up is not conducive to this kind of complex, pre-made object. But land sakes alive, it's like a miracle vaccine to have them available. And that's not even mentioning their easy and convenient way that you can change up the text font color, all these borders and panel colors and such. You know, this has been a great opportunity to make some graphs, a task which is not difficult in any game engine, really. Part of why I like making them so much. Look, you've got 4 different stats tracked over time. Witness! You can check the exact numbers from every individual second of the epidemic. Making those bits of text at the bottom was super easy in Godot too. Just put down a horizontal container node, add 5 labels, and boom, everything's sorted out. Enough rambling about Godot. It is now time for our scheduled monologue on the features that are not in the game. There's an upgrade you can put on your diseases that causes victims' legs to sometimes explode, rendering them unable to move at more than a snail's pace through molasses. The point of this upgrade was to stop people from going to the hospital and getting cured. After being beplagued by your concoctions for a while, the people would start retaliating by training up doctors, staying away from the ill, building hospitals, building guillotines. But alas, none of these retaliatory measures have actually been implemented. Would have been great. I'd also wanted to lean a bit more into the name, Crownvirus. In the existent version, people grow crowns when they are afflicted. But that's about the end of it. What you want is to have some kind of effect and wider visual theme related to crowns. The idea of crowns and royalty permeating the entire game. I picture it being a battlefield where you play as a monarchist faction, or the abstract notion of monarchy, using a series of infections and propaganda efforts to bring the people of this land over to your side. People infected become kings, but there's no reason for kings to spontaneously die, like victims of diseases do in reality. So the death rate would come from the French, famous king haters, coming along and guillotining all of the kings. They would set up camps in areas of high-density kings, prepared to swiftly guillotine anyone who comes by with even a scrap of gold or a single ruby on their head. They would set up factories to make guillotine robots that patrol the streets looking for kings to decapitate. Maybe you could retaliate by forcing your victims to build anti-guillotine turrets, perhaps poison baguette factories to deal with the French, maybe a hospital where people can get titanium necks to resist guillotine attacks. It would be an intense RTS-esque game against both the French trying to stop you and the uninfected trying to remain uninfected until you either destroy the French completely or all your pathogenerators fall. Or maybe the French could keep on coming endlessly and it's one of those games without much of an end like Factorio. See, instead of making all of this, I was fiddling with UI elements for a week. Alright, that's all for now. Maybe next time I'll actually make the game that I plan to make instead of just a 10-minute video where I talk about what could have been. Toodaloo, wee!